So, Michael, for the instructional designers out there who would just love to work with children and apply their skill set to working with young people, and they want to get into that world of children's education, what
Mm.
skills would you like them to have or start developing in order to really make a good fit into your world?
I think um, it's really important to have a deep interest in kids' experience that you can't really design. And we're talking about kids here, but like I also appreciate the fact that you've worked with adult learners for a long time too, Michael. I think learners are learners.
Right.
There's a certain consistency and predictability of developmental pathways that all people take. Child development is a thing that you can fairly depend on. And what continuously changes around that is the technology that we all use and how it affects our behavior. And so I've always found that really interesting. And the obviously the capacities of the technology has changed a lot. The ways in which we interact with it through different kinds of devices and interfaces and so forth changes. And I think we're all familiar with how our own kind of daily behavior has changed as a result of everyday experiences with technology, or like more like what we're talking about here professionally is like more intentional design for learning. All of that has shifted so much. I mean, I think of the incredibly now archaic but once futuristic work we did together
Mhm.
at Columbia when we were building all these tools together. um,
Right.
what was consistent, though, is that we were trying to center the experience of the learner and trying to solve some kind of learning challenge that we dreamed up as a problem that was brought to us by a faculty client or was observed in the field as a need or an opportunity to do something new and different. And that there's always this sort of the idea that you can continuously or be rigorous about the hard problems of serving individual learners. This shift away from industrial era, like everybody learning at the same materials at the same time, often in the same place, to this idea that learning can happen anywhere, and that everybody is different on some level, their interests, their needs, the ways they best learn. I think we're getting better at that. I think we still privilege affordances over human impact, and that the sort of what I like to think about is sort of the rigorous attention to people and making sure that you're actually accomplishing what you want. And the way to do that is really be really embedded in the learner's experience, get to know people really well, talk to a lot of them. I work at Sesame Workshop right now, and when I was in grad school, I had a summer internship on the content research team, and where we were like taking VHS cassettes to schools and like showing them, early versions of content. And like this, there's a 50-year history at Sesame of formative research where from the very beginning, everything was shown to kids to figure out whether they liked it, did they pay attention, and also were they taking away from it what we hoped they would. And there's I think this is the kind of approach that could transfer across any kind of learning design. It's this idea that you just have to care a lot about what you want people to learn and make sure that they do. So those are some things I think about in design. I think they're translatable for everything.
Michael, follow-up question. We studied at Teachers College. We took similar but different programs, and your program, cognitive psychology in education, was a fantastic program. It was very rigorous. It was very interesting. It had a lot of statistics and child development and I mean, just human development, but had a lot of psychology and cognitive behavior and statistics. Would you recommend that people take a master's in that in order to get into your field, or is it? What do you think about
Hmm.
your program as a part of breaking into that field?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm very glad that that was the approach I took, that it was more about human psychology and less about design just out of my own interest, that I
Right.
was like really interested in what was happening in people's brains,
Mhm.
and what the research showed about the ways in which people learn, and then from there the opportunity to use media and other methods to reach people in different ways. So I thought all of that was really interesting, and ultimately was a good foundation for applying to the otherwise ever shifting universe of context in which people are learning. The whole the way kids are mostly learning online, even when they're in school now in K-12, like this idea of really ready access to computing was stuff that wasn't possible when I started
Mhm.
graduate school. And so and now if you think about all the emerging tech that is in everybody's hands, and the power of, everybody's talking about
Mhm.
AI and everything nowadays, but the idea that the power of an AI, building on a massive data set and generating kind of insights and answers to people's questions, like that's in your hand. I mean, the fact that level of computing power and access to information is so ever present and faster, and can be customized, all that stuff. Like it's impossible really to have anticipated any of this really in the sort of everyday sense of it, but or we could have guessed that it was coming, but we just didn't know when or what it would look
Mhm.
like. But
Right.
the remember how we all read The Machine Stops,
Yes.
that Ian Forster story? Yeah. So like, yeah, that was like more than 100 years ago now, but
Hey,
it kind of
very
presaged
present.
really kind of disturbing idea that we'd all be like
Mhm.
living in little bubbles, isolated from one another, communicating electronically. But this uh having a sort of a consistent set of understandings about how humans learn that can be just continuously used to ask questions about hard problems
Yeah.
that we want to fix.
Yeah. Do you think that the field of, you know, instructional design around cognitive development and working with kids, do you think it's becoming more and more necessary to have those graduate degrees and people should
Hmm.
be maybe thinking about getting them? Or do you think there's a lot of different entry points still to working in the field without having to go into the say learning science or cognitive psychology?
Yeah.
Is there room for many people to still work in the field?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a big fan of learning.
Right.
I've always whether it's going to school for too many years as I did, or just always immersing yourself in the new stuff and trying to figure it out. I think you can learn in lots of different ways.
Yes.
And it depends on what you're trying to accomplish or what your own kind of preferences and needs are.
Right.
But for me, going to grad school was helpful. I did it part-time over a long period of time while I worked full-time. So that's just how it worked for me. And I got a lot of benefit out of the process of going through a whole doctoral program and doing research, writing a dissertation, et cetera. But also, like, what online learning was then versus now is so different. That I feel like there's so much you can learn at your own pace online with stuff that's freely available or behind some kind of paywall or structured experience. And I don't know if, it really depends what you want.
Sure.
I wasn't sure if I wanted an academic pathway,
Mhm.
and certainly there's a gatekeeper of like a degree program for that often, but and I do think that the amount of knowledge and sort of methods I acquired through that process remain really helpful to me to this day. But you don't have to do that path to do what I'm doing.